Cowabunga, dudes! The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles have been part of mainstream culture ever since they first debuted in the 80s. Every one of us knows the basic origin. 4 lab turtles and a rat are exposed to mutagen, mutate into crime-fighting ninjas, and live in the sewers of New York City. But do you know the origins of their close friend and ally, Casey Jones? Sure, we all know about the hockey mask, the sports gear, and that street-fighting attitude. But did you know that Casey's full name has changed, depending on the version you are looking at? In some versions, he is Arnold Bernard Casey Jones. In the IDW continuity, he is Casey Arnold Jones. And in other versions, the franchise keeps his personal details much looser. So if you, like me, are curious about the origins of the closest human ally of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, then join me as we dive deep into Casey Jones' history.
Casey Jones, shoot!
Where did Casey Jones first appear in the original Mirage comics? It might surprise you to learn that Casey Jones' first proper appearance in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles universe was not in an issue starring the entire team. Instead, he first showed up in a one-shot focused on Raphael. In the Mirage Comics one-shot Raphael Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle number 1, we see Raphael's first encounter with Casey Jones, a regular human being who goes out at night to act as a violent vigilante. This early incarnation of Casey Jones fits the original comics tone as a parody and response to the dark, gritty comics that were popular at the time. Even the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles themselves were originally built as a playful riff on gritty comic book tropes, especially the kind of street-level ninja action associated with comics like Daredevil. Casey's love for fighting and violence reflected the attitude of many darker, edgier characters who became popular in that era. These characters were often aggressive, unstable, and convinced that justice could be delivered through sheer force. The one-shot opens with Raphael and Michelangelo sparring, with Raph growing frustrated at his inability to strike Mikey. Furious, he swings a pipe at Mikey only to be stopped by Leonardo and admonished for his temper. Feeling guilty for his actions, Raph leaves the sewer hideout and heads out into the city to clear his mind. As he moves across the rooftops, he hears people being attacked by criminals and successfully drives the criminals away. However, this interaction is witnessed by a man in a hockey mask, who jumps in and starts beating the criminals with his hockey stick. This is the first meeting between Raphael and the vigilante Casey Jones. From the comic, we understand that Casey is a regular human being with no superpowers or ninja mutation. He is a self-made street vigilante who started fighting criminals because he was tired of the rampant crime and violence in his city. However, as Raphael notices, Casey goes way too far. He is not simply stopping purse snatchers, he is beating them almost to death. Raphael intervenes because Casey's version of justice is too brutal. While Raph has the advantage thanks to his ninja training, Casey manages to sucker punch him and escape. While Raph searches for him, Casey finds 2 carjackers and proceeds to beat them up as well. Raph finds him again and the two continue fighting until the clash leads them to a park. After a long fight, Casey finally surrenders. This is when the real bond begins. Raphael and Casey recognize something in each other. Both are angry, both are violent, both have a tendency to go too far. And when they hear someone in the park being mugged, they decide to fight the muggers together and save the innocent civilian. Thus begins a long friendship between Casey and the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, especially Raphael. It is interesting to see just how many elements of Casey Jones are present from his first appearance itself. The hockey mask, the vigilantism, the sports gear, the violent edge, and the friendship with Raphael all originate from this one issue. Later stories and adaptations keep returning to these elements. However, darker parts of Casey's Mirage Comics arc would not always carry into later kid-friendly versions. In the Mirage continuity, Casey's violence and personal damage are explored in much rougher ways, including alcoholism, marriage, parenthood, and the consequences of accidentally killing someone. As later Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles media began targeting younger audiences, many of these harsher aspects were softened or removed. While Casey remained a mask-wearing vigilante wielding sports equipment as weapons, his aggression was rarely exaggerated to the same degree as in his earliest comic stories. That shift happened largely because Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles became a massive toy and animation phenomenon, and the franchise had to work for younger viewers.
Casey Jones is gonna clean up this city.
What is Casey Jones' origin in the 1987 animated series? The 1987 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles animated series was one of the first versions of the Ninja Turtles aimed directly at a younger audience. The violence and grittiness of the original Mirage comics were replaced by a more comedic, colorful, and wacky style of storytelling. This shift was tied to the immense success of licensing the characters for toys and children's media. The animated series introduced a lot of elements that became central to the franchise. Different colored headbands for each turtle, their intense love for pizza, and April O'Neil's role as an investigative reporter. The popularity of the cartoon among young fans became so huge that other Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle media also started adapting lighter tones. Archie Comics' Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Adventures was created in that spirit, beginning with adaptations of the animated series before developing its own continuity. With that change in tone, it is unsurprising that the hyper-violent vigilante Casey Jones also had to be changed. He still wears his hockey mask and fights with sports gear, but his homicidal edge from the Mirage comics is gone. We are first introduced to him in the episode Casey Jones, Outlaw Hero, where he goes around dealing with lawbreakers in an exaggerated, over-the-top way. In that episode, Casey comes into conflict with the Ninja Turtles when his violent actions are blamed on them, leading April and the Turtles to investigate and stop him. His obsession with fighting crime and his itch to get into fights are shown in a comedic, slapstick manner. He is portrayed as intense, delusional, and weird, even believing the Ninja Turtles might be Martian invaders. As in the Mirage comics, this version of Casey is obsessed with cop movies, especially the fictional Filthy Harry series, which is an obvious reference to Dirty Harry. Casey even adopts a Clint Eastwood-style attitude in some appearances. This version of Casey also never takes off his mask. The show keeps him permanently hidden behind it even when he is going undercover, which turns the whole thing into a running joke. The animated series adapts Casey's hot-headedness and aggressive nature while making him funny and likable enough for a younger audience. He even states that holding back his urge to destroy something causes him stress, sometimes even an ulcer. That is how obsessed with fighting and destruction this version of Casey Jones is. With all these parts adapted, you might be shocked to know that Casey Jones only appears a handful of times in the show's entire run, despite the Mirage version having more importance in the larger Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle mythos. The 1987 animated series mostly sidelines him in favor of brighter, more child-friendly stories. We do not get the deep Raphael friendship from the Mirage comics, and we do not get the developing romance with April O'Neil either. In fact, this version of Casey and April barely share the emotional connection that later adaptations would explore. The show does not give him a full backstory, keeping him more as a chaotic comic relief vigilante who occasionally gets the opportunity to do something badass. Despite the 1987 animated series being one of the most popular versions of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, it does not offer us much in terms of Casey's deeper characterization. The version that really cemented Casey Jones in many viewers' minds was the live-action movie released in 1990.
Listen, pal. Class is Pain 101. Your instructor's Casey Jones. Look!
What is Casey Jones' origin in the 1990 live-action movie? The live-action Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles film was one of the biggest independent film successes of its time. This alone should prove how massive Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles had become as a franchise. The film was released by New Line Cinema and brought the Ninja Turtles into the real world through elaborate suits and animatronics created by Jim Henson's Creature Shop. It was also one of Jim Henson's final major projects before his death. Though the movie largely followed the early Mirage comics tone and plot beats, the personalities and humor were also influenced by the popularity of the 1987 animated series. The film's success led to a trilogy, with Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 2: The Secret of the Ooze in 1991 and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 in 1993. By the third film, however, the series had lost much of its momentum. Just like in the original Raphael one-shot, the 1990 movie introduces Casey Jones as a street vigilante. He fights criminals using sports gear, and this brings him into conflict with Raphael, who opposes the way Casey beats up muggers. Their first meeting is rough, funny, and violent, and it immediately captures the same energy that made their comic relationship work. However, the movie also gives Casey a bit more everyday personality than the original one-shot. We learn that he is a former hockey player and that the mask and gear are connected to that background. After his sports career did not work out, he ended up channeling his aggression into vigilante justice. As the film goes on, Casey witnesses the Turtles fight with the Foot Clan and joins them in their battle to save New York City. He becomes an important part of the story, and he is even partially responsible for Shredder's defeat. After Splinter knocks Shredder into a garbage truck, Casey accidentally activates the compactor. Elias Koteas portrays Casey with a charming kind of oafishness. He is rough, impulsive, and a little ridiculous, but he is also likable enough that he never feels like a complete brute. The film blends the original Mirage-era characterization with a lighter, more accessible tone in a much better way than the 1987 cartoon did. Casey does not appear in the second live-action movie, but he returns in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3. In that film, Casey stays in the present, while the Turtles are sent into feudal Japan. The movie also introduces Wit, a British mercenary from the past who helps the Turtles despite some initial tension. Wit is also played by Elias Koteas, and it is strongly implied that he may be an ancestor of Casey Jones. So yes, helping the Ninja Turtles might literally run in the family. Because Casey Jones was not much of a presence in the 1987 animated series, the 1990 film helped cement the popular idea of Casey in the public consciousness. The ex-hockey player angle, the streetwise charm, the sports gear, the romance with April, and the brotherly tension with Raphael all became major parts of how fans remember him. Series co-creator Peter Laird has spoken highly of the 1990 live-action movie as one of the best adaptations of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and Elias Koteas' performance as Casey remains one of the most iconic versions of the character.
I guess you could call it fate. But I finally met somebody as angry as I am.
What is Casey Jones' origin in the 2003 animated series? After the 1987 animated series, the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles found new life in another animated show, which first aired in 2003. This version moved away from the heavy comedy of the earlier cartoon and stuck much closer to the original Mirage comics, with more dramatic storytelling, stronger action, and a larger focus on martial arts. The 2003 animated series also had proper story arcs, unlike the more episodic nature of the 1987 show. However, it did not shy away from the wackier elements of the franchise either. Aliens, time travel, mystical ninjas, and strange creatures all became part of the story as the series went on, but it never lost focus on family, loyalty, and martial arts, which are central to Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Among the foes the Turtles face, the 2003 series introduces the Purple Dragons, a street gang with deep ties to the Foot Clan. It is this gang that ties the fate of Casey Jones to the Turtles. Much like the original comic and the 1990 movie, the Turtles' first encounter with Casey is a hostile one. Raphael finds him out at night beating up criminals and intervenes, leading to a fight that eventually turns into shared understanding and friendship. But what the 2003 series adds to Casey's backstory is a much more personal motivation for his vigilantism. Casey's hatred of street crime comes from an incident when he was young. His father, Arnold Jones Sr., owned a store that was threatened by the Purple Dragons. When Arnold Sr. refused to pay protection money, the gang burned the store down. Though the show does not dwell on every detail, it is heavily implied that the Purple Dragons were involved in the destruction of Casey's family life, and possibly his father's death after he tried to stand up to them. This violence, along with his father's lesson about doing the right thing, pushes Casey toward becoming a vigilante. Unlike the 1987 animated version, or even the 1990 movie version, this adaptation gives Casey a proper backstory and motivation for his crime-fighting ways. As a result, he feels much more fleshed out. He is not just a recurring gag or a one-movie sidekick. He is a proper supporting character. We later see that this version of Casey has an even deeper connection to the Turtles. When Casey was a child, still going by Arnold or Arnie at the time, he met the young Turtles while they were exploring the surface in disguise. Little Arnie was being bullied by older, stronger kids, and the young turtles tried to help him using martial arts. They even gave him an impromptu training session to boost his confidence and help him stand up to his bullies. Each turtle took a turn wearing a human disguise and meeting with young Arnie, training him in their own way. But all their efforts failed to make him stand up to the bullies immediately. Eventually, Master Splinter caught the turtles and admonished them for trying to train Arnie when they were still only students themselves. The turtles returned to the sewers and never realized that the young Arnie they had met would grow up to become Casey Jones. After they left, young Casey saw the same bullies harassing another friend. Filled with rage, he charged in and beat them with a hockey stick. In that moment, we see the seeds of the vigilante he would eventually become. This episode establishes a secret connection between Casey and the Turtles that the characters themselves never discover, but the effect of that meeting shaped Casey's entire future. What is Casey Jones's origin in the IDW comics? In 2009, Nickelodeon acquired the rights to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles franchise, and IDW later published a new Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles comic set in a brand new continuity. This version rebooted the Turtles for a modern audience while mixing the franchise's classic elements with new mythology. In the IDW continuity, Turtles are reworked as reincarnations of Hamato Yoshi's sons, with Hamato Yoshi himself reincarnated as Splinter. They mutate into their familiar forms through exposure to alien mutagen. Though this version changes a lot of lore, it keeps the spirit of what came before, mixing family tragedy, science fiction, fantasy, and action. Casey Jones becomes one of the most emotionally detailed supporting characters in this continuity. This version of Casey is younger than many earlier versions. He is a college student with a hockey scholarship, but he also has a keen interest in street fights and vigilante justice. However, we soon learn that this Casey comes from a broken home. His mother died of cancer, and his father, Arnold Jones Sr., is an alcoholic, abusive man with criminal connections and gambling debts. His first meeting with Raphael is very different from the Mirage comic. Instead of Raphael finding Casey beating up a mugger, Raph saves Casey from a beating at the hands of his own father. That single change gives their relationship a deeper emotional foundation. Casey and Raphael bond because both are angry, wounded, and searching for family in different ways. Raph also connects with Casey during a time when he is separated from his own brothers and father figure. Casey gives Raph a sense of camaraderie, while Raph gives Casey a way out of isolation. Their friendship becomes one of the strongest versions of the Casey and Raphael bond in the franchise. Casey's violence stems from his pain at home. He turns to street fighting and vigilantism because he cannot fix his own broken family. When Raph eventually reunites with the Turtles, Casey meets the rest of the family and becomes part of their world. But the conflict at home eventually reaches a breaking point. Casey moves out of his father's house and grows closer to the Turtles. His father, Arnold Jones Sr., returns to his old criminal life and eventually becomes Hun, the leader of the Purple Dragons. This is a major change from earlier versions. Instead of Hun being the man who destroyed Casey's father, Hun is Casey's father. That makes the Casey vs. Purple Dragons conflict much more personal. Hun and Casey fight constantly, but Hun also tries to convince his son to join him and become a Purple Dragon. The series does not shy away from the pain of this relationship. Casey loves his father, but his father keeps choosing violence, crime, and addiction. This version removes much of the goofy humor from Casey's origin and replaces it with emotional damage. Even though Casey receives abuse from his father, he initially refuses to strike back because of a promise he made to his mother on her deathbed. He even fights criminals connected to his father's debts, showing that his actions are motivated by a complicated love for family. But his father's refusal to accept that love is what ultimately forces Casey to turn away. The IDW version of the Casey Jones is probably the most psychologically layered version of Casey we have ever gotten.
Fight, Leo. Fight your fear.
What is Casey Jones's origin in the 2012 Nickelodeon series? The 2012 animated series was aimed at a younger audience, but compared to the 1987 cartoon, it still committed to long-running arcs, emotional development, and serious stakes. The ages of many characters were lowered so younger audiences could relate to them more easily. but the show still built a living world where characters developed over time. We first meet Casey Jones as a high school student whom April has to tutor. From his interactions with April, we see that he is not particularly studious, but he is very dedicated to his high school ice hockey team. Despite his difficult personality, he agrees to work with April to improve his grades so he can stay on the team. He also expresses interest in becoming a bounty hunter when he grows up, and he shows a more sensitive side while talking with April. When April is attacked by Mutagen Man, Casey intervenes despite being only a high schooler, buying April enough time to escape. In a later incident, he meets April again at an ice rink, where he helps her fight off Foot Clan ninjas. These early appearances establish Casey as an energetic, reckless, but endearing character, before he becomes a full ally of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. This version of Casey is one of the youngest versions depicted, so the creators spend time establishing him as a capable fighter and reliable friend to April before bringing him deeper into the Turtles' world. Casey's first major encounter with the Turtles follows the familiar pattern. Raphael finds him fighting 3 criminals from the Purple Dragons, and Raph steps in to stop him from going too far. Casey later sneaks into the Turtles' lair and discovers their secret while also learning about April's connection to them. Casey's interactions with the Turtles feel natural because the show set him up before this moment. His friendship with Raphael, based on their shared love of fighting crime and their matching tempers, feels believable because we have already seen these aspects of Casey in his scenes with April. The show also explores Casey's friendship with each turtle. His bond with Raphael is the closest, but he also develops interesting dynamics with the others. Casey and Donatello initially share a rivalry because of their crushes on April, though this eventually shifts toward friendship. Casey's recklessness causes Leonardo to worry about him, while Mikey initially sees him as an intruder in the group, but eventually they all grow to care for Casey like one of their own.
You don't think I've got plans for this?
What is Casey Jones's origin in the 2016 live-action movie? After Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles 3 in 1993, the Ninja Turtles did not appear in live-action films for a long time. They continued through animation, comics, and other media until the 2014 live-action reboot, which used CGI to bring the Turtles to life. Paramount produced the film with Michael Bay as one of the executive producers. The 2014 film focused on the Turtles' origin and their fight against the Foot Clan with April O'Neil's help. It was in the 2016 sequel, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Out of the Shadows, that the wackier elements of the franchise were brought forward, including Krang, Bebop, and Rocksteady. This was also where the Paramount version of Casey Jones appeared, played by Stephen Amell. This version of Casey Jones is not a lifelong vigilante at first. He is a prison corrections officer who dreams of becoming a police detective. He is involved in transporting Shredder, Bebop, and Rocksteady when the Foot Clan intervenes and breaks them out. During the escape, Casey also catches a glimpse of the Ninja Turtles as they try to stop Shredder from getting away. But because the escape happens on his watch, Casey gets blamed and suspended. That leads him to go off on his own to find Bebop and Rocksteady and clear his name. He wears his iconic hockey mask to conceal his identity while hunting the criminals, and this eventually leads him to April O'Neil, who is being chased by the Foot Clan. Through April, Casey gets pulled into the Turtles' world. Though he is initially frightened by them, he reveals that the Turtles were trying to prevent Shredder's escape and decides to work with them. The 2016 version of Casey Jones deviates wildly from the original comic character. Instead of a crazed vigilante obsessed with fighting crime, he starts as a regular corrections officer with police ambitions. His turn to vigilantism does not come from personal trauma or obsession. It comes from the Foot Clan ruining his career and forcing him to take matters into his own hands. He slowly becomes a version closer to the Casey we know, with the hockey mask, sports gear, and street fighting attitude. But compared to other adaptations, this version is completely different and unique.
What enemy of our clan am I to crush between my fists?
What is Cassandra Casey Jones's origin in Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles? Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles is one of the most radically different animated versions of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. The series changes core details, such as making Raphael the oldest brother and Leonardo the goofy second in command, instead of the traditional serious leader. Shredder is also reimagined less as a normal ninja master and more as a demonic threat the Turtles and their allies must stop. However, for most of the series, one major Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle ally seems to be missing: Casey Jones. The fan-favorite hockey enthusiast is nowhere to be seen until the finale, Rise. There, an original character known as the Foot Recruit, a member of the Foot Clan and a soldier loyal to Shredder, undergoes a crisis of faith and betrays him. As she rips off her mask and attacks Shredder with her weapon, it bends into the shape of a hockey stick, and she reveals her true name, Cassandra Jones. The Foot Recruit, as we knew Cassandra for most of the series, is perhaps the wildest Casey-related change in a show full of radical changes. Instead of being a vigilante the Turtles find beating up criminals, she begins as a criminal herself, a member of the Foot Clan. She is a low-level grunt, usually bossed around by the Foot Lieutenant and Foot Brute. Though she wants to prove herself in the Foot Clan and rise through the ranks, her plans are often spoiled either by the strictness of the clan or by the actions of the Turtles and their allies. However, she also shows through small gestures that she is not as evil as the organization she serves. She shows concern when Shredder abandons the Foot Brute and Foot Lieutenant, even though she gets promoted in their absence, which is something she had wanted for the entire show. She also bonds with Splinter, and it is this bond that ultimately helps her turn against Shredder and embrace her identity as this continuity's Casey Jones. Though there have been female Jones family members in Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle media before, Cassandra is the first major version to take over the Casey Jones role within her continuity, rather than simply being related to him. Though she only joins the Turtles' side in the finale, by the time of the movie she is considered a close ally of the Turtles. The movie adds an interesting wrinkle by introducing Casey Jones II, Cassandra's son from the future. This version follows the design language of the original Casey Jones more closely, including the trademark hockey mask, but because he was raised by the Ninja Turtles as mature adults in a war-torn future, Casey II does not carry the same reckless hostility or love for violence as many earlier Caseys. He is sent back in time to prevent the invasion of Earth by the Krang. When he meets the present-day Turtles, he is disappointed to find out that they are immature teenagers instead of the legendary heroes who raised him in the future. Casey II and Cassandra Jones are both different adaptations of the Casey Jones idea. Cassandra carries the rebellious, aggressive hockey stick energy, while Casey II carries the legacy hero design and the emotional weight of the future. From the original Mirage Comics version of Casey Jones to the two different Casey-related versions we saw in Rise of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, almost every major Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles continuity finds some way to bring Casey into the story. He is a fan favorite for a reason. He brings an aggressive and oafish charm to the cast, while also serving as one of the most important human allies the Turtles have ever had. Sometimes he is a violent street vigilante. Sometimes he is a former hockey player. Sometimes he is a broken kid from an abusive home. Sometimes he is a high school student, a corrections officer, a Foot Clan recruit, or a future resistance fighter. But across all these versions, the core idea remains the same. Casey Jones is the ordinary human who throws himself into an extraordinary war because he refuses to stand aside. His love for violence and his aggressive nature make him an interesting foil to the Ninja Turtles, especially Raphael. But his loyalty, courage, and heart are what make him more than just a guy in a hockey mask. How Casey and the Turtles grow because of each other is a key part of his role in the franchise. The charm Casey Jones represents is also the charm that made Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles such a global phenomenon. It is messy, funny, emotional, violent, and weird in exactly the right way, and I hope to see him show up in future Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle projects as well.